love, and longing. "Go suck stones, you stupid bitches!" Someone from inside the house shouts, and a huge burst of blue plasma launches itself at the undamaged police cruiser. Vernon's arm snaps out and throws a seed in the way, and the plasma gets tangled up and dispelled in a sudden expanding bush covered in vibrant dark green leaves. "Honey, I dare say that stealth has already failed." Vernon calls over the van, and Mironoir hops on top before hopping down next to him. "I dare say you're correct, my love. As for you, officer, your fellows are a little rattled, but otherwise unharmed. They won't need medical attention, but some will need a few minutes. Drivers are dazed, but otherwise unhurt. The engine is a complete loss, though, so this vehicle is grounded," Vernon states. "What was that power surge?" she asks. "Its axiom siphon was bent in on itself for a feedback loop, Vernon explains before his arm snaps up and intercepts a laser beam. "It was a bit of a pain to bend back, but it's fine." "You're one of those human sorcerers, aren't you?" "I'm the human sorcerer, Vernon Shea, and this is my beautiful wife, Battle Princess Mironoir." "Will you be willing to act as backup?" Officer Finry Gore asks. "Yes," Mironoir states. "Where she goes, I go. I'm a soldier as well, immune to laser and plasma fire," Vernon states. "Non-lethal. This is a police operation, not military." "Yes, ma'am," Vernon states before looking at the building and stomping a foot. The whole building hops out of the ground a full meter, then drops back down with a bang. There are curses and screams from inside, and Mironoir is already moving through an open second-story window as Vernon tunnels through the earth and breaches into the basement. He's surrounded by weapons of all sorts, and he moves past them without even touching one. He notes an underground tunnel, but he can't sense any axiom sources in the beyond, so he simply takes notes of it as he goes on with his current plan. After all, if the armory is locked away, then the secret tunnel in the armory is locked away too. He reaches the door and unlocks it from his side just in time to see an Apuk woman fiddling with keys. "Boo!" She moves to punch him before stopping. "That's interesting." "What is a man?" she begins before he pushes her back lightly and then closes the door behind him. He places his palm on the center, and vines grow all over it to deny the armory to anyone and everyone who tries to get in. "Sorcerer!" she calls out as she dives away, and he grabs her by the ankle. This time, there is no hesitation, and she unleashes a flurry of kicks. This just puts his other ankle in her reach, and he ties them together with vines before pulling back and grappling at her hands as she tries to claw at him in retaliation. But he's too quick for her, and soon enough, her wrists are bound with vines that cause her to teleport to the tree just outside. Through the tree, he can see the sudden surprise of the furiously debating officers as the barless woman drops in near them, but they quickly rally as the furious feuder breathes a huge lung of red fire tinged with just a hint of blue. It sends the officers understandably scattering, but it also sets off the tree that reaches down and gags her in response. Meanwhile, Mironoir has dodged her first spear thrust and has grabbed onto the shaft of the probing weapon to pull it out of the grasp of the impertinent woman. A device is thrown at her, and she catches it before recognizing it. An explosive. She doesn't give it time to detonate as she mulches it between her fingers. The smell is awful, and a small amount of the payload is still activated by the device. But the end result only flash crystallizes part of her outfit rather than turning her into some kind of statue. Well, that's interesting. She notes even as the fragile crystal breaks away to reveal her unharmed thigh beneath. The spearwoman tries to get the spear back, and Mironoir jabs the end into her stomach hard and winds her before spinning the spear around with one hand and then tossing it out the window, butt end first to not accidentally impale someone. You can't just... One of the girls, the one that threw the grenade, begins, but Mironoir is already right next to her and has a hand around her forehead. The sleep effect hits her like a hammer and she's out cold and gently lowered to the ground. The girl's nerveless fingers drop another of those strange grenades, and Miro Noir's hand snaps out to grab the tail of the now retreating spearwoman. A yank puts her in reach of a grab for the head, and she has two unconscious women in her hands. So she goes back to the window and tosses them to the dark forest tree with a call of, "Catch honey!" The tree obliges, and both unconscious are gently lowered to the ground for the officers to properly arrest. After that catch, Vernon is treading through the building and finds himself walking over a tri-tight safe. The disruption it has in the local axiom is subtle but recognizable. He unveils it but doesn't bother opening it as he moves on. That's when a series of bars shoot out of the door frames in the room he's in and traps him there. Neat. He notes before markings on the bars start glowing with axiom, and he's suddenly in more than just a mere cage. He's trapped in an axiom cage designed to block standard teleportation. But woodwalking is not standard teleporting and is a much higher grade of bullshit, as proven by other sorcerers throughout history. So he's comfortably back outside and leaning against the dark forest tree for a moment. "So how illegal is it to trap a house?" he asks the startled officers as he pointedly ignores the rifle pointing right at his face. "Did you?" "I found one. I uncovered a safe and the room locked itself before kicking off that effect I'm sure you can all feel from out here." "That's an area denial barrier. Sorcerers can slip out of those," Officer Finry Gore asks. "Yes, I'm not even the first to do this, but story time is for later," he says before turning to the house again. "Honey, the house is booby-trapped. Be careful, love." "It's also bigger on the inside," Miro Noir calls back. "I noticed. I think our little home could use such an upgrade when our clutch of angels start wanting their own rooms." "That does sound like a plan, however. Now is not a time for plans, but for action," Miro Noir calls back. "True enough. Once more unto the breach," Vernon says before vanishing back to the armory door with a woodwalk. The room immediately at the end of the small hallway is closed off as its cage is going off, but he can hear approaching movement, so he quickly checks a nearby room, finds it to be a linen closet, and steps in to wait a few moments. He then silently opens the door just after an Apuk woman passes by with a strange weapon in hand. She peers through the glowing barrier and past the bars to try and see who set off the trap. "Excuse," Vernon begins, and she whirls around to bring the weapon to bear, and Vernon grabs it to start wrestling it out of her hands. She breathes a huge lung of blue fire directly in his face. She then meets the top of his head as he slams into her, and he can feel her nose crunch. The weapon is tossed away, and he grabs at her wrists, and vines wrap around while she's still dazed, and in moments she's tied up. She's then teleported to the tree outside with a forced woodwalk, and he goes to grab the weapon and open the front door. He quickly walks down and holds out the weapon for the officers to take. Looks like a spear gun, basically, but it activates an axiom explosive when it's launched. These are very dangerous and one of the things we were afraid of, Officer Finry Gore says. "What else?" "Fractal grenades, a form of demolition equipment that's been weaponized. They transform all carbon in an area to a brittle state. It doesn't last long, but it's usually followed by a shattering strike. They're not lethal. A person will resist it, but it turns the clothing, dead skin, dead hair, and other little bits into sharp crystal razor blades all over you. Good God! It makes things hard, but so fragile that a building will collapse in on itself if it hits a load-bearing wall or pillar." "Right. Got it," Vernon says before turning back to the building. "Honey, something called fractal grenades and explosive harpoon launchers. Be careful," he calls. "I've found some. Don't worry, I've already reinforced my skin." Miro Noir calls out, and Vernon nods before starting to head back and then pausing. He then removes the false horns and tail and vanishes them into the dark forest. He has a storage room there for such things. Well, that was disturbing to see. Officer Finn Rigor states, "When this nonsense is dealt with, I'd like to see the history of all this madness, please," Vernon says as he sweeps back his hair. He rushes back in even as Mironoir catches notice of a trap up above and flits backwards to avoid an explosion that rocks the building. There are screams and Vernon rushes to the source of them. The first thing he's greeted with is an axe flying towards his neck, and he melts away from the blow. A Pook woman, brown hair, half-dressed and furious. Beyond her are the children he saw the other day. No time to play nice. His hand snaps up and he knocks the woman out, even as he has vines tie her up. He then teleports her to the rest outside before the axe can even touch the floor. As it clatters, the children stare at him and he crouches down to their level. "I don't know what you've been told. I don't know what's been done to you, but I will make sure you get out all right. You have to trust me," he says, holding out his hand, and they press together. "Children, I'm not going to hold you responsible for what others have done. You don't even know us. I know your children, that's reason enough," he says. "Whatever grudge or wrong is being passed down doesn't have to be yours," and he catches an empty mug that's thrown at him. It would have bounced off his shoulder, but he's not in the habit of just taking a hit. "Suckstones! You're lying! It's war! It's always war! Our job is to keep them safe. Make sure they're not taken like their grandparents were." The leader of the little group spits out, "Bring Chai Barless back. I just sent her outside. She's not hurt. I understand you don't trust me. You were raised on stories of what the other clan would do to you, and you thought it would be a great idea to bring the boys to the dark forest to keep them safe. And it will keep them safe. I can get them out now. But what about you?" Vernon asks. "What do you even want?" "I don't want kids to die because grown-ups were stupid. That's what I want. I want you safe. I get you don't trust me. I'm weird, I'm not your parents, and I'm not family. I just sent Chai Barless away, I get it. But there's a big bomb threat around here. The police are angry, and you asked for help from the forest, so you're damn well going to get it." "But that's not how sorcerers work." "It is now," Vernon promises. "Now come on, let's get you out of here, please. You don't even know what's going on. The Harkle are evil. They're why everything's going wrong. Bring Chai Barless back." "She's just outside. Go and see her," Vernon prompts, stepping back and leaving the way clear, and the leader holds up a practice sword between herself and him as she slowly inches forward, and then, when she's in reach of the axe, she steps to the side and keeps pressing forward. "Get the axe and go outside," the girl tells the rest. "Alars," one of the girls says. "Do it. This isn't how. I don't know what's going on, but the whole house jumped. We need to go." She commands the rest, and after a few moments the group does so, a shorter girl grabbing the axe and holding it up in case Vernon does anything as the entire group moves outside. "Police! There are police!" One of the little girls calls out, and Alars Barless presses her training sword up against him. "They're not going to hurt you. They're going to take them away, you stupid, evil jerk," Alars Barless exclaims as she presses up, and before she can react, Vernon's hands snap out and both her and her sister are out cold under a knockout effect. He catches them both and gently stands up to carry them out. There's no good or easy way out of this situation, so they have to end it then just sort it out after. But just because there's going to be a mess no matter what does not give him license to get sloppy.